Hello, everyone, and welcome to this discussion hosted by NWMI Kerala on seeking justice for workplace abuse, lessons that we've learned from the Hema Committee. I welcome on board the eminent panelists that we have, Vinod K. Jose, Caravan editor, former editor, Dhanya Rajendran, editor-in-chief of the News Minute, which has been following this very carefully and putting out a lot of stories that have given us a better picture of what is happening before and after the Hema Committee report is released. We have with us singer and dubbing artist Chinmay Sripada, founder member of WCC and actors, state award-winning actor Padma Priya, Madhrubhumi senior journalist Melina Toli with us. I hope I haven't left out anyone. And we're looking forward to a very interesting discussion on what is that the lessons that we've learned from the Hema Committee, and going forward, what is it that we're expecting from the revelations that have come out from this, and the aftermath of it and the ripples it has created in newsrooms and in other media centers and in other working areas where women work. So this is what let's discuss going forward what we can expect from this. And it would be very nice if also the panelists can ask questions after they will introduce themselves. So over to the panelists. Please, you've given 5 minutes each. Please talk about what you plan to talk and what you'd like to discuss, so that the other participants will have an idea what to ask each of you, and how, as we go forward, we can discuss this in this very, very pertinent matter that affects all of us, not only women in cinema, but also women working in other industries as well. Media, the IT field, and every hospitals, the whole gambit of workspaces. I'm sure the Women in Cinema Collective have set a example to many other women in different fields, and they must be congratulated for taking this forward and fighting a very gritty battle despite the great odds that they have faced. And we are really proud to have some of them joining this panel. So over to you, Vinod. Would you like to kick off this by introducing yourself and talking about what the discussions will be about?
Sure. Thank you, Saraswati, and hello, everyone. All right. I think, maybe first wearing the hat of a citizen before I wear the hat as a journalist. I think we are seeing a very decisive moment in history, not just for the feminism movement in India, but all over the world, that, depending on which country you are, people could trace it the second generation or the third generation of the movement. But if you look at where we are in India today, and especially, let's say, most of us who are here, I assume, are from Kerala, and especially in this context, the conversation starter is a committee report which has come about in Kerala. I think we can certainly agree on at least this, that we are seeing something for the first time which we haven't seen before, that we are witnessing very serious rights-oriented conversation, and there is a committee report which has opened that discussion, but the committee for the first place was also created because it was sort of result of something else, and that was a result of something else. And I think there we should agree that this is creating a space and opening up a lot of opportunities for people who are interested in just spaces for work, people who are interested in making better relationships, better society at large, and a lot of solidarity is possible along with that, not just within the feminism movement, but with all kinds of rights-oriented movements. Second point, let's say, as a journalist, I come to this from a practitioner's point of view. The sort of 25 years that I've been a journalist, for the last year and a half, I've sort of taken a sabbatical, so to speak, from active newsroom management. But especially the years that I was sort of involved in commissioning stories, in investigating stories and guiding investigations and publishing those and assessing the risks legally and otherwise in publishing those stories. there is this gives me a lot of satisfaction to sort of witness this moment now, because 10 years ago, this kind of journalism was very difficult, and that's partly because there was no space for that. And I think maybe there is, in the conversation or opportunity to speak later, I could probably be a little useful if there is any way that I could be useful is by and large sort of figuring out what kind of Me Too stories did, sort of I help get published as a Caravan editor, because I think the years starting from 2015, I would like to trace as the time when we as a long form investigative magazine at that point in Caravan commissioned probably the first ever 15,000 or whatever long cover story on Pachori, who was sort of a very important figure in the policy circuit in Delhi. And this was sort of started by Nikita Saxena, the sort of brilliant journalist, a reporter who brought the story. And then you see the Me Too movement starting a year or two later in the US, and then thereafter in 2018-19, the conversation, and Caravan also sort of publishing the first cover story on Me Too, the series of investigations that we had done, which took close to a year for us to sort of put it together. So maybe there is something there in the kind of risk assessment. How do we package it, put it together in a way that we can get away with it? Because that's often the worry of publishers and others. How do you sort of do journalism in this space? Because you are sort of sometimes breaking the rules, the conventional rules in publishing in many sense. But we're also doing that because you know that the truth is on one side and the truth needs to be sort of defended and supported. So I think that's broadly my opening comment, if at all. There is a way that I could be useful here.
Thank you, Vinod. That was interesting to listen to, because you looked at the different aspects of what is happening right now. May I request Chinmay? She was one of the first to come out and speak out against this and be a part of the Me Too campaign, especially in South India. So Chinmay, as one of the first people to come out and speak up against the kind of treatment you received, would you like to talk about what happened and what happened afterwards, after you spoke up?
I first shared my sorry, I had to smile because I saw Dhanya's son, and then I remembered another live where she mentioned about her son, and I'm so sorry, not her face, but anyway. First things first, in 2018 I first shared my story anonymously, saying that I was, Mr. Vairamuthu sexually harassed me. And then after I saw more and more stories being shared about Mr. Vairamuthu and my amplifying them, I came out and said, okay, one of the survivors that is actually me. And I also helped amplify the stories of other people, especially about the continuing now president of the dubbing union, Mr. Radhavi. And within, I think, a week or so, I was promptly banned from the dubbing union. And this is a case that is ongoing with the City Civil Court in Madras. It's been 6 years and counting. You know how it is. It is really, really slow, highly process oriented, and it's really not a comfortable space. From even the way you sit or how you dress and how your hair looks, everything is microscopically managed. They ask you to be a certain way, dress a certain way, and inside the court, all of that was new to me. And most definitely the other side's lawyer will indulge in character assassination, and that's when I realized for the first time that even if there are women in an open courthouse, there will be people saying even the character is real and all of that, and nobody will condemn it. Nobody sitting right there, not the judge will say anything, neither the others who are sitting in the room will say anything. Neither will it be noted down that somebody like that is saying something about my character, which has nothing to do with the case as such. So the ban continues, and this I think my greatest challenge has been, I was also saying that I was, borderline envious about the WCC and how they have been able to come together and push for something to happen in the Kerala industry. In one way, time and again, I'm being gaslit by my own seniors and my own fraternity, my colleagues. So it's very tiring, because even I think why it is problematic for me also is that I think particularly say the issue in itself is that a politician, somebody who had an office in a government agency like the National Commission for Men, and also holds a prominent space in Nadigar Sangam, she comes out and gives interviews saying that I have not been banned and it's just a perception. So this is what I am dealing with, and it's almost like, oh my God, Stonewall, Stonewall, Stonewall. I'm like, this is frustrating. So it is very, some days I wake up, I'm like, oh, woe is me, what is this life sort of a thing. On some days I feel better. But today, thankfully, one of those days where I'm able to smile about it, because I just saw another interview of like one more gaslighting by seniors in the industry. So it's me, especially when somebody comes and asks me, what do you suggest, right? It is extremely hard to go through the legal process. I'm not saying that as a deterrent, but this is just as things as they are. And for still a lot of survivors from the industry or otherwise, they lack the support system from home to be either emotionally or financially to be able to wage this sort of a thing. On an offside, there was this lady, Ms. Vichitra. Is my 5 minutes up yet, or am I rambling?
Yes. One more, maybe
It's up?
one
Okay.
more minute. No, 1 more minute. Why don't
Okay.
you wind it up?
I'll wind it up. So, Vichitra ji, who spoke on Big Boss about her own experience, she had complained to the Nadigar Sangam. She had gone to the police. They all together just didn't see help that case see light of day, and then she just got vexed and just said, "Okay, fine, I'm going," sort of a thing. So this sums up somebody from at least 20 years ago going through the same system, and somebody from 6 years ago going through the same system, and consistently getting stonewalled. Yeah, this is with regard to my industry. Yeah.
Thank you, Chinmay. Since you spoke about the WCC, I think we should organically go on to Padma Priya. She's one of the founder members. Priya, Chinmay was talking about the stonewalling, the subversive activities by, kind of an unofficial ban on her, which is never put down on paper or anything, and the kind of gaslighting
No,
she had to
it's
face.
put down on paper. That's the thing. My ban is official. I am banned on paper by the dubbing union, which is why I have to go to court. So that the dubbing union comes under the labor commissioner. So I am legally banned. The FEFC comes under the labor commissioner and trade law, trade union act, la 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 la. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes it even more trickier, Chinmay, because
Yeah.
because in the Malayalam industry, I think it's all unofficial. I don't think there's anything put down on paper. It is just kind of the whisper campaign that goes around. So Priya, tell us something about WCC and how long this kind of stonewalling, the lack of job opportunities. A lot of members in the WCC kind of lost work because you were part of WCC and dared to speak out about certain practices. Can you kind of give us a kind of a glimpse of what it was like to be right there?
Yeah. So I think for the purpose of this conversation, I think it would be very useful to actually trace back the story of how we came about. And really, there was no precedence. It was even before the Me Too movement started internationally that WCC happened. And at least, so what happened was that a survivor, a colleague, a work colleague, we all know about it, was assaulted on her way to work. And then we just a bunch of women over WhatsApp and phone calls, and we knew each other for a good decade, right? Like all of them, some of our founding members like Rima, I know even before entering the film industry, we were co-dancers in Bangalore in the same dance group. And strangely, in spite of having kind of some understanding of each other, it was this moment that took us to come together to speak, because being an unorganized sector, there is really no space where you come and meet. Like a film project happens, another film project happens, you don't see the same actors, they're supporting actors, there are women of all all kinds of doing all kinds of errands, and not everybody speaks to each other. The only time, and that also only the actors kind of end up meeting, and perhaps some singers and filmmakers, so there were none, at least until a few years ago, that women and men would come together in film award ceremonies and probably meet, but that would be more like a social occasion to network. And the only other time would be when you would meet your association members in an annual general body meeting. So our understanding of, or the need for understanding the industry was very limited. B, there is a very unsaid culture of silence, where we are supposed to just like go by status quo. So we are like, okay, you don't got your salary or like your money for this particular film, then you somehow like nudge, and then one day you will not go to work. So you find your own ways to talk about it without seeming like the person who complains. And so one fine day we were like I think a month, about 15 days after the incident happened, is when we all physically met together, like 17, 18 women, and for the first time the conversation was basically, it started with, okay, what all can we do for the survivor? And then we said, okay, we can do legal aid. And then we a few of us got into the discussion of talking to some lawyers saying, can we really intervene? There was like a lot of confusion. So we basically had like a bunch of 18, 20 very voluble, open, women who can like actually put their point of view, put forth their point of view, where like put in a room with nothing to do. And that's when the conversation started from, hey, what happened to the driver in your set? And the conversation went, and it's really interesting because in that room there were not only actors. The first time in my life, there was a makeup artist, there was a hairstylist, there was an editor, there's the singer, and there's like a lot of snacks, and there are directors, there's the associate directors, and there are writers, and there are all kinds of women. And we're like, why is it that there's a systemically, like we have a similar experience? And it's not just sexual exploitation or any kind of sexual advance. There was like a systemic understanding and a feeling of a certain kind of a feudalism, a certain kind of power which was imposed, and we're not supposed to talk about it. So what actually happened was that what was basically, what the information that came through an untraceable link of rumor mills, suddenly right there became like a declaration of the experience of exploitation. And that experience of exploitation is not just, is about feeling vulnerable towards it. And this constant need of protecting yourself. And I have to quote Rima on this constant thing of waking up in the morning and going to work, and you like constantly have to think, oh my God, what are the things that we need to account? It's exactly like going on a public transport bus, right? Like, oh, do I have to carry a safety pin? Do I carry a paper? Why should the onus of us going to a workplace have such kind of a thought process when we are going there, including the kind of story we are doing, negotiating, what kind of conversations we want to have, how do we, modulate a particular character? And so that's when it hit to us that there's this culture of silence, and we anyway can only do so much for the survivor. And if we are asking something from the CM, which was supposedly more for finding the right kind of lawyers and state support for her, we said, why make it piecemeal? Let's go full hog. And that's how that conversation started, and a list of like 20 recommendations, some of which are also part of the Hema Committee report, was already like made for us. We like came up with solutions. But we also realized at that point of time, when we made the solutions or the recommendations, that we need to like introspect on what is this meaning of justice that we are asking and for whom. And when you get into that, then you realize that it's not just something which is relegated to the 18, 20 of us, but to a larger section of women whom those stories we don't know of. And that's how the request for the Hema Committee report came, and the lack of complete data about this. And the second thing, we realized that a lot of our male colleagues go through the same thing. They also go through the cultural silence. It's just that subjugation is very different, and its presence comes out in different ways. And so therefore, the cultural silence doesn't support or benefit anybody, especially in creating a healthy workspace. And that's how WCC's tagline came in, which is about equal spaces and equal opportunities, because unless you have a space which is equal, which believes in fairness, that we're not going to get fair opportunities to tell diverse stories. And that's an onus which as an artistic industry completely lies on us, of like a huge amount of that. And then we realized, then whom all do we go to for this justice? Then that comes from ethics, law, the associations. And that's the journey that it's taken for the last 7.5 years. And I don't know how long, because from then, I see Amu ma'am here. That's how the WCC Sakhi report came about, which kind of tried to collate experiences across 4 industries, women across varied trades, and try to collate the experiences through varied formats, while the Justice Hema Committee report was also happening, to kind of get a sense, is that systemic issue just a Malayalam film industry issue? And is there things that we can learn from in terms of issues and resolutions from across the industry and their experiences? The second thing was the High Court that we went to, because nobody was understanding that POSH needs to be applied. Fine, it's an unorganized sector, but there is no definition of whom does the onus and responsibility lie on. Because if you go to an actors association, they say, oh, we are just an association suddenly. You go to FEFCA, which is a trade union, technically a legal union, they're like, everybody, literally, including the government of Kerala, in their first responses to the High Court, where we said that the POSH needs to be implemented, said, oh, we are not responsible. And the first time, I think that was an important judgment, because for the first time, the locus of responsibility was clearly defined, and the role of associations in that locus of responsibility was defined. The locus of responsibility in the producer being identified, and also the associations from the perspective of them actually fighting for the rights of the welfare of their members. And from there to now, of course, the Hema Committee report was very important, because even the Sakhi report was something which was championed by WCC, and our stamp was in some which way there, in spite of the fact that it was a very, very a very inclusive, very wide repository of experiences across industries, in the southern film industries. In spite of that, the JHC was extremely important. And for me, it was a revelation when I was reading the report about a lot of accounts and trades that we had absolutely no idea about, especially in terms of the fact that food practices in Kerala being different for junior artists. I mean, and that too only because you refuse to accede to a certain kind of exploitation that's imposed on you.
Priya, can we talk about that in the discussions that follow, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. Just as a closure for me. Yeah, I just want to
please go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And is that today the Producers Association has come up with a list of records, and it's really interesting that it doesn't even cover 50% of what the Hema Committee talks about, rubbishing even the committee reports validity. But I think for me, far more interesting is the fact that the state of denial that we continue to be in the industry, unless we acknowledge that a problem exists. We can sit here and talk about a zillion solutions, but those solutions are not going to be effective economically, welfare-wise, and culturally for the industry and creatively until and unless we agree that these are issues, and then therefore look at the most optimal solutions. Sorry if I really overshot time. Yeah.
I think we should let Dhanya talk about it, because for the longest time, TNM has been closely following it and writing relentlessly on this, because it's very important for the media to keep following with follow-up stories and keep the pressure up. I think it'll be interesting to talk to her, because she's been following it very diligently, the TNM, with stories, with exposés, with interviews, and with in-depth essays and so on. Over to you, Dhanya, please.
So I'll have only 4 minutes because Padma Priya ate up one of my
That's
minutes.
okay. Go on for 1 more minute.
No, I'm kidding. So I see, the thing is, 2006, I worked for television for a long time. I worked for television for 8 years. And as Vinod was saying, covering sexual harassment or anything which is endemic to any industry was perhaps not high on the media's agenda for a very long time. I'm not saying there were no stories, but it was not something that we paid attention to, right? Me Too, of course, before Me Too, the whole sexual assault of the actor happened in Kerala. And I specifically remember seeing that picture of the women, of these group of women meeting Pinarayi Vijayan at that time. And I did not know a single one of them personally then. I was also just a journalist who looked at the picture and simply felt happy that a group of women had come together to actually meet the chief minister and push forward something. Sitting far away in Bengaluru, I just thought, okay, this is important. A lot of women have come together. They may not know us, we may not know them. In whatever our ways, let us keep supporting their effort. That is how, it's not just me. I know Anna Vetikard, so many other people started writing about the WCC more and more, because we felt it has to be organic, right? We have to write about them because they are leading a feminist movement, and sometimes they are not able to see what is happening around them. There are so many discussions around them. They also sort of create a wall around them because you cannot be drawn into all the voices, right? So we thought, let's write about these things. So there were a couple of journalists who took a lot of interest about writing about the WCC, and a lot of them, I can proudly say, are part of the NWMI also, which is how my whole association of writing about this starts. Then the Me Too movement begins in 2018, and it was a very, very difficult time, because remember, none of us knew exactly how to cover this, what to do with this. We had to come up with our own editorial practices and rules immediately at the go, right? Because people were putting on anonymous things on Twitter, they would put on anonymous things on Facebook. How do you react to that? Should we take everybody's anonymous things seriously? Should we only put out stories after we speak to a person? For example, Chinmay said she was anonymous. So I think I would have spoken to Chinmay also for the first time when the Me Too movement started. And then with Chinmay's story, I also realized another thing, that there is a lot of attention on a celebrity, right? Chinmay was a celebrity who spoke about something. Therefore, she became the target of attacks. And it's very easy for us to get distracted by this. But what people kept forgetting, and even today, I'm telling you, a lot of people in Tamil Nadu are not aware of the fact that it is not just Chinmay. Around 10 to 15 women have come and spoken about the same man, Vairamuthu. Some of them anonymous, some of them not anonymous. But whenever we speak of Vairamuthu, we only think of Chinmay. So at the News Minute, our continuous effort was that whenever we write about it, we will always write that there were many women. It's not just Chinmay, right? So there was some. So I think along with WCC, along with the Me Too movement, our practices in the industry also evolved. Like I remember writing down rules of how to cover Me Too for my own newsroom. Then we had an issue where one of the reporters spoke to somebody about a source. So then we had to have another set of rules about, if you speak to someone on Me Too, then who you do not tell, what you do not tell, even your editor, these kind of things. So we kept evolving. And with the WCC, one thing that I feel the media has done is that they definitely have supported the movement in many ways, whenever there have been difficult trajectories also. But the media also has been distracting. For example, even when the Hema Committee report came out, WCC is continuously saying that, look, it is not just about sexual harassment, it is about a lot of other things. Can we focus on everything else? For example, you're talking about an industry where there is no contract of your salary. You're talking about an industry where basic rights are not. And I spoke to a Tamil senior actor yesterday who told me that some of the problems mentioned in the Hema Committee are 20 years old. I told her, what are those experiences? She said, food is now given to everyone. I said, solutions are not universal. It's not happening across, because I have spoken to several young women in Malayalam industry who still do not get food on the set. Yeah. They are told that it's a big deal that they are part of the movie, so they can just eat biscuits or they can manage their own food. So my point is, when WCC keeps on saying that there are more issues than sexual harassment, that we cannot continuously talk about one thing, the media has to also listen, because it is their movement too, right? It is primarily their movement. So I feel that way the media has to be less distracting. And I feel the last 2 weeks have been problematic, the way the coverage has gone. And I hope the media comes back on the path. For example, what Padmapriya just said, the Producers Association has written to the Chief Minister of Kerala, actually saying that the Hema Committee did not have experts, and saying that women cannot just be encouraged to come to cinema. It must be an organic process. This is something we've heard in journalism, right? Women cannot be covering politics. It must be an organic process. And we are not paying enough attention. One of the biggest bodies in Kerala have actually said no to the Hema Committee and written the Chief Minister of Kerala. And we are still talking about, is it a fake case against one actor? Is this case against this actor correct? So I feel many times the media's responsibility is to keep pushing the dialogue towards the right side. And there we should not forget what it is. And also, I believe I'll quickly finish, Saraswati, with the WCC, with Chinmay, with the Me Too movement, there's also sisterhood which evolved, right? We in the media also realize that it's no longer just about reporting for us. It's also about sisterhoods. It's about realizing that we also face problems in our environments, in where we work. And therefore, we have to support another set of women who are fighting there. Like Melina, for example, like me, may not have known any of these actors or filmmakers before, let's say 3 or 4 years ago. But now they would reach out to her because they understand that there's a sisterhood. Melina will understand the story. Melina will do justice to it. So I think along with these movements, women journalists have also built sisterhoods with most of these people. And that may be true for journalists in Bengal, journalists in Karnataka. And I think that is also very, very, very crucial to see that such movements become important, such movements become powerful, and that we have some results out of it.
Thank you, Dhanya. Melina, Melina has a couple of things to discuss with us about what she feels is very important at this point of this ongoing discussion. Melina Parayu. She'll be speaking in Malayalam and I'll be translating after she finishes. Thank you.
Hi. WCC യുമായിട്ടുള്ള നമ്മുടെ ഒരുമിച്ചുള്ള ഒരു യാത്ര എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് എന്നെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് പേഴ്സണലി സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ദിലീപിന് അനുകൂലമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു വലിയൊരു പൊതുവികാരം നമ്മുടെ മാധ്യമങ്ങളിൽ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അതിലൊരു പ്രമുഖ മാധ്യമം എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു, ദിലീപ് ഈ ഓണക്കാലത്ത് എന്ത് ചെയ്യുമായിരിക്കും സ്വന്തം അച്ഛനെയും അമ്മേനെയും ഒന്നും കാണാതെ എന്നുള്ളത്. അത് വലിയ രീതിയിൽ ഒരു കണ്ണീർ കഥയായിട്ട് വരെ ഒരു മാധ്യമത്തിൽ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ആ സമയത്താണ് നമ്മൾ കുറ്റാരോപിതൻ ആപത്തിൽപ്പെട്ടവനും നടി ഇരയുമാകുന്ന നെറികെട്ട സിനിമാക്കാലം എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ ഒരു വലിയ ആർട്ടിക്കിൾ നമ്മൾ കവർ പേജ് ആയിട്ട് കൊടുക്കുന്നത്. അതൊരു തരത്തിൽ അത് എഴുതി കഴിഞ്ഞ സമയത്തൊക്കെ ചില സ്ത്രീകളൊക്കെ നമ്മളെ വന്നിട്ട് അവർ ആഗ്രഹിച്ചത് എന്നുള്ള മട്ടിൽ കെട്ടിപ്പിടിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അത് ഭയങ്കര പേഴ്സണൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള മൊമെന്റ്സ് ആയിരുന്നു. പിന്നെ അതിനുശേഷം WCCയിലെ ചില അംഗങ്ങൾ രാജിവെച്ച് പോയ സമയത്ത് മക്കളെ മറന്ന അമ്മ എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ പല രീതിയിലുള്ള ഇടപെടലുകൾ നടത്തിയിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഈവൻ ആ ഒരു ആർട്ടിക്കിൾ എഴുതിയതിന്റെ പേരിൽ നമുക്ക് ഊമക്കത്തുകൾ വരെ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ആ ഊമക്കത്തുകളിൽ തന്നെ ആ കാറിന്റെ ഉള്ളിൽ എന്താ നടന്നെന്നുള്ളത് വരെ ഡീറ്റെയിൽ ആയിട്ട് എഴുതിയ തരത്തിലുള്ളതായിരുന്നു ആ ഊമക്കത്തുകൾ എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അപ്പം ഇത്തരത്തിലായിരുന്നു നമ്മുടെ യാത്ര ആ സമയത്ത് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നത്. പിന്നെ അതിനുശേഷം ഇപ്പൊ വിജയ് ബാബു റേപ്പ് കേസിലെ അതിജീവിതയാണെങ്കിലും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ലിജു കൃഷ്ണ റേപ്പ് കേസിലെ അതിജീവിത, ഇവരെല്ലാം നമ്മളെ സമീപിക്കാൻ തുടങ്ങി. അവരുടെ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ വന്നു. ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ വിജയ് ബാബു റേപ്പ് കേസിലെ സർവൈവറിനെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് അവര് വളരെ വലിയ രീതിയിലുള്ള സ്ലട്ട് ഷെയ്മിങ് ആ സമയത്ത് നേരിടുന്നുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അതായത് അവൾ അഡ്ജസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്തിട്ടല്ലേ അവൾക്ക് ഈ അനുഭവം ഉണ്ടായത് എന്നുള്ള തരത്തിലുള്ള സ്ലട്ട് ഷെയ്മിങ് നേരിടുന്നുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പക്ഷെ ആ സമയത്ത് നമ്മൾ ചില ആർട്ടിക്കിൾസും ഇന്റർവ്യൂസും ഒക്കെ കൊടുത്തത് നല്ല രീതിയിൽ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യപ്പെട്ടു. ട്രോമ ബോണ്ടിങ്ങിനെ പറ്റി, മാനിപ്പുലേറ്റഡ് കൺസെന്റിനെ പറ്റിയുള്ള ചർച്ചകളിലേക്കൊക്കെ അത് കൊണ്ടുപോയിരുന്നു. പക്ഷെ ഇപ്പം ഹേമ കമ്മിറ്റി റിപ്പോർട്ട് പുറത്തു വന്നതിന് ശേഷം സ്ത്രീകൾക്ക് അനുകൂലമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു വലിയ പൊതു അഭിപ്രായ രൂപീകരണം രൂപപ്പെട്ടത് വലിയൊരു തുറന്നു പറച്ചിലിന് ഇടയാക്കിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. അപ്പം കുറച്ചു മുമ്പേ നമ്മൾ ഇരകളുടെ ക്യാരക്ടർ അസാസിനേഷൻ അന്ന് നടന്നിരുന്നെങ്കിൽ ഇന്ന് വളരെ കുറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്. മാനിപ്പുലേറ്റഡ് കൺസെന്റ് എന്താണെന്നുള്ളൊരു ബോധം ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ട്. ട്രോമ ബോണ്ടിങ് എന്നുള്ളത് എന്താണെന്ന് ഒരു ബോധം ഉണ്ടായി തുടങ്ങിയിട്ടുണ്ട് നമ്മുടെ പൊതുസമൂഹത്തിന്. അതിന് NWMI ആയാലും പിന്നെ അതുപോലെ WCC ആയാലും മറ്റ് വനിതാ കൂട്ടായ്മകളായാലും ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് മൂവ്മെന്റുകളായാലും ഒക്കെ വലിയ പങ്ക് തന്നെ വഹിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ സ്വാഭാവികമായിട്ടും ഇത്തരം ഒരു ഘട്ടത്തിൽ പ്രിഡേറ്റർമാരെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് അവരുടെ ഒരു മോഡസ് ഒപ്പറാൻഡി എന്തായാലും മാറുമല്ലോ. അപ്പം അവര് പുതിയ രീതിയിലുള്ള തന്ത്രങ്ങളായിരിക്കും അവര് മെനയുക. ഒരു പക്ഷെ അവര് വ്യാജ ആരോപണങ്ങൾ ഉന്നയിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി ചില ആളുകളെ കൊണ്ടുവന്നേക്കാം കൊണ്ടുവന്നു എന്നല്ല, കൊണ്ടുവന്നേക്കാം. പക്ഷെ അത് ഏതൊരു മൂവ്മെന്റിലും ഉണ്ടാകാവുന്ന, അതിനെ തുരങ്കം വെക്കാനുള്ള സ്വാഭാവിക സംഭവ വികാസമായിട്ട് മാത്രം കാണേണ്ടതുണ്ട് നമ്മൾ. കാരണം കഴിഞ്ഞ ദിവസങ്ങളിലൊക്കെ ഫെമിനിസ്റ്റ് മൂവ്മെന്റുകളൊക്കെ ഒപ്പം നിന്ന് ഇപ്പൊ എന്റെ കൊളീഗ്സ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആളുകളൊക്കെ ചില തരത്തിൽ നമ്മുടെ അടുത്ത് കൺസേൺ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. എന്റെ അച്ഛനും അമ്മയ്ക്കും എതിരെ വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, ഇത്ര വ്യാജ ആരോപണം വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ എന്ത് ചെയ്യും എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ. അതായത് സ്ത്രീകളുടെ ഒരു ആങ്സൈറ്റീനെ മുതലെടുത്തുകൊണ്ട് സ്ത്രീകൾക്കെതിരെ നിർത്തുക എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. പക്ഷെ ഏത് മൂവ്മെന്റും, ഇനിയിപ്പോ ഒരു രാഷ്ട്രീയ മൂവ്മെന്റ് ഉണ്ടായാലും അതിനൊരു അരാഷ്ട്രീയമായിട്ടുള്ള ആളുകളെ കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് അതിനെ തുരങ്കം വെക്കാൻ നോക്കും. അത്തരത്തിലുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഒരു പക്ഷെ നടന്നേക്കാം. അതിൽ നമുക്ക് കൺസേൺ വേണ്ട എന്നുള്ളത് ഞാൻ പറയാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുകയാണ്. ആ തരത്തിലുള്ള ഒരു പൊതു അഭിപ്രായ രൂപീകരണം കൂടി, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അത്തരത്തിലുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ കൂടി നമ്മൾ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യേണ്ടതുണ്ട് എന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഹേമ കമ്മിറ്റി റിപ്പോർട്ട് വന്നതിന് ശേഷം വെറും ഒരു മീറ്റു മൂവ്മെന്റിന്റെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ മാത്രം സംസാരിച്ചു പോവാന്നുള്ളത്, ഇപ്പൊ മാധ്യമങ്ങളിലായാലും അവര് മറ്റ് കാര്യങ്ങളും കൂടി ചർച്ച ചെയ്യപ്പെടേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. അതായത് ലേബർ റൈറ്റ്സുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളും കൂടി ചർച്ച ചെയ്യപ്പെടേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ മേക്കപ്പ് ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റുകളുടെ വിഷയം വെച്ച് നോക്കുമ്പോൾ തന്നെ അവർക്ക് ഈ അടുത്താണ് അവർക്ക് അംഗത്വം ലഭിക്കുന്നത്. എനിക്കതിൽ എന്താ പറയുക, വളരെ വലിയ തൊഴിൽ നിഷേധമാണ് ഈ മേക്കപ്പ് ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റുകളൊക്കെ നേരിടുന്നത്. അതായത് 35 വയസ്സ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ഒരു പ്രായപരിധി അവർക്ക് വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. അത് കൃത്യമായിട്ടും സ്ത്രീകളെ മാത്രം ഉന്നം വെച്ചിട്ടുള്ളതാണ് എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. കാരണം സ്ത്രീകൾ പലപ്പോഴും കല്യാണം കഴിഞ്ഞ് കുട്ടികളൊക്കെ ഒന്ന് സെറ്റിൽഡ് ആയിട്ട് വരുമ്പം അവരെ തടയുക എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു ലക്ഷ്യം വെച്ചുകൊണ്ടുള്ളതാണ്. അതിൽ മേക്കപ്പ് ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റിലെ പല സ്ത്രീകളും നമ്മളെടുത്ത് സംസാരിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. സമീറ സനീഷ് കോസ്റ്റ്യൂം ഡിസൈനർ ആയിട്ട് വലിയൊരു മുന്നേറ്റം നടത്തിയിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് പുരുഷന്മാരുടെ സ്പേസിലേക്ക് വന്നപ്പം അവരുടെ ഉള്ളിൽ ഉണ്ടായ ഒരു കൺസേൺ ആണ് ഈ തരത്തില് മേക്കപ്പ് ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റുകളിലെ ഈ 35 വയസ്സ് എന്നുള്ളൊരു ലിമിറ്റ് വെക്കുന്നതിലേക്ക് നയിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളത്. അത് അവർ പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ അവർക്ക് അംഗത്വം കൊടുത്താൽ മാത്രമേ അവരുടെ തൊഴിലിടത്തിൽ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ എന്നുള്ളത്. പല മേക്കപ്പ് ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റുകളും, ഞാൻ ഇപ്പൊ നിർത്താം, പല മേക്കപ്പ് ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റുകളും കഴിഞ്ഞ ദിവസങ്ങളിലൊക്കെ നമ്മളെ വിളിച്ചപ്പോൾ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നത്, സ്വിഗ്ഗി ഡെലിവറി ഗേൾ ആയിട്ടാണ് ഞങ്ങളിപ്പോ പോകുന്നത്, കഞ്ഞിക്കട തുടങ്ങിയിട്ടുണ്ട് ചില സ്ത്രീകൾ. അപ്പം അത്തരത്തിലുള്ള വലിയ രീതിയിലുള്ള തൊഴിൽ നിഷേധങ്ങളും നമ്മൾ ഈ സമയത്ത് ചർച്ച ചെയ്യപ്പെടേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. പിന്നെ അതുപോലെ തന്നെ KSDC ഇത്രയും കാലം ഫെലോഷിപ്പ് കൊടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നല്ലോ, അതായത് സ്ത്രീകൾക്ക് സിനിമ എടുക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട്. അതിനൊരു ലാഭം ഉണ്ടാക്കാനുള്ള ഒരു കാര്യമായിട്ടാണ് അവർ തന്നെ കാണുന്നത് തോന്നുന്നു. അതായത് എന്ത് കോസിന് നിന്നും അതിനെതിരെ നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു സംഗതി. ഇപ്പം കൊടുക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ ഫെലോഷിപ്പ്, ഇപ്പൊ തുക കൊടുക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഇത്തരം ചർച്ചകളൊന്നും ഉണ്ടാവുന്നില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് പണ്ട് സ്വരാഭാസ്കർ പറഞ്ഞത് ഞാൻ ഓർക്കുന്നു, പത്മാവതി സിനിമ കണ്ടപ്പോൾ, നമ്മൾ സ്ത്രീകളെ വെറും യോനികളായി ചുരുക്കി എന്നുള്ളൊരു തോന്നൽ പറഞ്ഞിരുന്നു. അതുപോലെ ഈ ഹേമ കമ്മിറ്റി റിപ്പോർട്ട് വന്നതിന് ശേഷമുള്ള മീറ്റു മൂവ്മെന്റുകളെ മൊത്തം നമ്മൾ വെളിപ്പെടുത്തലുകൾ വെറും മീറ്റു മൂവ്മെന്റിലേക്ക് മാത്രം ഒതുക്കാതെ ഇത്തരത്തിലുള്ള ലേബർ റൈറ്റ്സ് കൂടി ഞാൻ അടക്കമുള്ള മാധ്യമങ്ങൾ മുൻകൈ എടുത്തുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മൾ ഇൻട്രോസ്പെക്ട് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് കൂടുതൽ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യേണ്ടിയിരിക്കുന്നു. ബാക്കി കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഞാൻ തുടർന്ന് പറയാം.
Thank you, Melina. I hope I can do justice to all that you said. So what Melina said is, she started with saying that when Dilip was accused in the molestation of the actor inside the car in 2017. So when he was in prison, during that Onam, there were news headlines that said, oh, they were kind of lamenting the fact that what would Dilip be thinking without meeting his parents during Onam and so on and so forth. A very male chauvinistic view, because it is completely reducing the survivor's experiences and what she has to do. So then people like Melina and other women journalists and other newspapers came out with reports that also highlighted the survivors' experiences and what would she be going through at that point of time. At the same time, then there were cases that came up, the Vijay Babu rape case. He was going around with a woman who was an aspiring actor. So when she came out and said that she had been raped and she had been given false promises by this actor producer, there was a lot of slut shaming her, saying that she asked for it and why did she have to go and sleep with him when, and so on and so forth, the sitting on the high moral horse and saying, sitting on judgment on her. And same thing with the Liju Krishna case also. So then newspapers had to write about saying that there is a difference about what is manipulative consent, what is consent, and so on and so forth. So Melina is saying that thanks to organizations like the NWMI, WCC and other feminist organization, there is more awareness among readers about what is manipulated consent, trauma bonding, what is the definition of a consensual living in, and so on, and so different kinds of issues like that. Then she says that about the false allegations that have surfaced. Whenever there is a movement like this, with a lot of allegations, serious ones being made against actors in the Malayalam film industry, suddenly there's a flood of allegations about other actors too. And a couple of days later, it was proved that one of the allegations was not very correct, and that there were loopholes in the whole allegation, which looked like a false one. So the whole thing is, what she was saying is that there is, in all movements like this, there is an attempt to kind of reduce it and the magnitude of it, and say that, look, there are so much of false allegations coming in, so not everything can be true. It's kind of trying to reduce the magnitude of the problems and make it, trivialize it, and say that these women are trying to take advantage of, and so on. She goes on to say that the Hema Committee report is not only about emotional abuse and sexual abuse. There are serious labor violations taking place on the sets and locations, essentially workplaces, and the government has not been looking into it as such. One she mentions is the status of makeup artists in Malayalam cinema. Many a time the makeup artists are not, they have to be members of this union, and the membership has been closed at 35. So she says it's ageism, and also to prevent women from becoming members, because by the time women get married, have children, kind of settle down, they're already 35. And she says this one has to point out there are serious labor violations that is taking place in the cinema field, as with every other field where women are working. And she also questions the Kerala State Film Development Corporation. The government had come up with a scheme where from all over Kerala, women could apply, and of that, I think 3 or 4 women would be selected and given 1 crore to make a film. So it was to encourage women to work behind the camera and kind of get them into film direction and so on. She wonders what is happening, because there have been cases where the directors have called out gaslighting by higher officials in the KSFDC. So she says these are some of the things that she would like us to discuss today. All right, Melina, anything else to add? Thank you, Melina. So now the floor is open to all the, whoever wants to ask questions. I hope all of you will ask interesting questions so that we can discuss whatever the panelists have kind of introduced. Shall I start with Shreya Raman? Maybe Padma, Priya, maybe you could take this. What is the state of unionizing in Kerala's film industry? Are there multiple trade-based unions like in Bollywood? And what kind of space do women have to fight for their rights? I'll just add one thing. There are multiple unions for every trade, like for editors, for technicians, and so on. Earlier, there was one big umbrella organization called MACTA that brought all these little organizations together for the technicians. But for Malayalam, the Association of Malayalam Movie Artists, AMMA, was only one of its kind for actors. And now over to Priya. Maybe you can explain the rest of it better.
I think there's also an important distinction between trade unions and associations. Malayalam industry is very similar, and that's also very similar to Tamil, Telugu. I'm myself a member in many other associations across the country. Typically, you have an film chamber, you have, which is also an association. Then you have, which is where the titles of films, etc., gets registered. Then you have an association producers, then you have association distributors. The only trade union per se, they're all associations, right? So technically they can be, they're structured in a way that whatever happens in an association can stay within an association. The amount of state intervention into associations are very limited. Very much akin to Bollywood and other industries. Trade unions are typically, like as Saraswati said, there was only one before for called NACTA, which was for technicians. And then at some point, there was this major furor and power struggle, which led to the breakup of this and a large part of MACTA went to form something called FEFCA, which is an umbrella body of trade unions, and within it houses the directors union, the editors union, the like many others, the singers union, and stuff like that. So they have legitimately far more higher, including the lightmen, technicians and stuff. They have far more like rights to like go and present what should be the wages and stuff. But again, membership to this, interestingly, is like a very small amount, but getting in requires you to spend far more amount of money. Now, what is the kind of space for women? Actually, this has never come into discussion until now, and actually until 2018, when as AMMA, we went, as members of AMMA, we went to the executive committee, especially when the survivor was forced to resign, literally because of the inactions and actions of AMMA's executive body, that when we presented and said that there should be a minimum amount of representation of women in the body, that there should be an IC, and like there should be, and so that's when this conversation started. And when that conversation started, there was like a women's thing started, women's wing, as they popularly call, started in FEFCA. And you know, these are pretty much tokenistic spaces. Yeah. And so literally there is no constructive space for conversation and issue resolution, because especially in trade unions, principally because the number of women representation is very less. Like in editors union, there are only 2 women. And so there is no articulation, therefore, of what the idea of female welfare is.
And just to add to
Can I
that,
just add one point to this?
yeah, Dhanya, 1 minute. I just wanted to add that MACTA was actually completely broken up by one actor who got into trouble with the director about money being paid and so on and so forth. So that shows this how powerful certain actors are within MACTA and FEFCA. So it was just formed to help one actor mainly get out of a difficult legal loophole. Yeah, over to you, Dhanya.
Yeah, so this one actor we're talking about is Dilip, who also broke up MACTA and formed FEFCA. So the whole point about these unions and associations, I mean, however you classify them, what I've realized now is that it's massively controlled by one group of people, right? Whether they are big actors, big producers, big directors. So look at their reactions to the Hema Committee also. So when you talk about a power group, within the Hema Committee says there's a power group, you then take how FEFCA reacts, how MMA reacts, how Producers Association reacts. They'll firstly we welcome the report. Then as you peel the layers, they'll be like, the report is not good. The report should not have said this. And they also have these token women who they bring to these press meets. I actually feel, I'm not sure what to say about this, but they sort of make it representative of all women. So that's how they've been dealing with this problem all the time. If WCC is a problem, that's how they've been dealing with WCC as a problem.
Yeah.
I just want to add that if you wondered why how one actor can actually break up a union and create another one, then more just for clarification, not one person is playing one role. So an actor, a big actor, could be a producer, a distributor, and be part of those associations as well.
Own cinema houses as well.
And own cinema houses. And that's not even restricted just to actors. It applies to directors, and therefore, like, actually it's very problematic what the secretary of FEFCA said, that, oh, we're not a power group, but we are like powerful people who want to come and make films together. And that itself is problematic because you're talking about monopolizing the economics of the industry. Quick answer to that.
Ashwin, I'll come to you. Before that, Geeta has asked a question. Maybe Vinod will be able to answer that. How do we create, she says, thanks Chinmay for speaking up the longest time. How do we create a better process to secure justice? It is so debilitating from the filing of a complaint, ensuring evidence is gathered properly, endless court dates, alienating courtroom atmosphere and things like that. How do we, because Chinmay said even the judge didn't have a problem when there were, remarks against her. Would you like to comment on that, Vinod?
Yeah, I think we should, I think, it's not easy to begin with. I think one should have energy and sort of some kind of insatiable hunger to sort of pursue some of this. But having said that, I think from, let's say, the journalist point of view, I mean, maybe I think the more we can push to get the best evidence out there, and doesn't always need to be completely backed up with sort of proper source protocol that we follow, because I think we need to also sort of see some of these stories as not the ordinary, where the sources would be sort of wary of coming out in open. They are worried about their future, their career. They're worried about their socio-economic systems around binding them. So that, I think, as journalists, we should be empathetic and sympathetic too, that we can't push them and we can't push them to a corner where they're uncomfortable. I think what the ugliness of most of the television sort of driven conversation right now on any of this, which I think judiciary also gets influenced, is that there is a sort of a celebratorial sort of approach to this whole story, in a way that, like I think somebody has sort of pointed it out there about how the
Yes.
TRPs and all that sort of. So that probably sometimes is counterproductive in that space. But I think, we face this when some of the year-long investigations that Caravan did, whether it is Jadin Das, who is like the Mohanlal of Indian art, so to speak.
Yeah.
It is sort of very difficult for us to touch somebody like him at that point. Or, Gaurav Sawant, he's sort of very senior journalist who is at the top of India Today. And that's a big empire, or even Justice Gogoi, he is the Chief Justice of India, probably the biggest
But
Me Too
how
in
do you, sorry to interrupt you, Vinod, how do you ensure that even in court, they have to face these derogatory remarks about their character, about the way they dress, about their personal life? Because none of this comes into the picture when you're talking about an abuse or a molestation case. How does it matter what you wear and where you go and so on, your personal life? How do we ensure that judges don't get, preconceived notions about a person?
Yeah, that's right. See, I think there are two kinds of stories which comes on sort of in the whole Me Too spectrum, right? There is that story where a person risks everything and goes to public and hosts a press
Yes.
conference, and that person is very vulnerable. I totally understand that. But
Mm.
then there are also stories where, let's say, a journalist is involved, a reporter or an investigative journalist involved, team of 2 or 3 people in a news organization put their weight behind processing that story, and they think it through with the sources. They comfort the source, they take them through a process, and then the lawyers are involved, and then you sort of package the story in a certain way that the source is protected. I don't see in any of those stories which has gone through this kind of process, the source hasn't witnessed any of these abuses that we have seen. So,
Yes.
and I think there are multiple layers of protection there, right? So I remember going to some of the big lawyers in Delhi with many of these drafts and telling them, like, how do we really want to publish this? How do we publish it? So let's say 4 out of 5 lawyers said, no, you can't publish this. This is rubbish. You can't go ahead. And one of them, unfortunately, was sort of a very senior feminist lawyer too. And she was scared because as she was giving me the legal answer, so to speak, right? But there was another feminist lawyer, and very good in the sort of crime scene. So she said, look, Vinod, you could be in trouble. Your organization could be in trouble. You are hitting really well-respected, so to speak, people. And they could get an injunction order. They could, make it very difficult for you. But let's think it through and how do we process this? As Danya said, there's many of this, I think, as journalists, we're still dealing with all this as first-generation journalists, right? And if the target is big, let's say the abuser in this case, or in any case, is somebody who has a lot of sort of weight behind such a person, industry is behind, industry bodies are behind, big money is behind, political power is behind, the harder the work process and the thought process for the editor and for the reporters involved, right? And I think the law I think with most of these stories, how I think there are protocols that we kind of kept with us. And I think the compromise that we made is that we told the sources, look, we will protect you. And we are putting our reputation on the firing line. The institution will fight for you. And let's say if there is an ugly judge like the one that you pointing out, and the judge in a case of trial force us to sort of reveal our source, then what do we do, right? There is very little precedent in Indian journalism where the classic norm, I think, for Caravan when we were doing it after the Rafael scam and Judge Loya's case and many of those big stories which are targeting the big political offices in the country. So at that point also we had this question. So I think the thinking was that we'll go to jail if we have to go to jail for that. We will not reveal the source. But in this Me Too case also, then there was sort of a middle ground with the sources. I think what worked for us in many sense, which I think could also be considered as a template for any investigative editors or journalists out there, is that we could bring in a culture where, let's say, if there's a big story and there are 5 sources, and if all 5 want to be anonymous, we could still publish that story where internally that we know as editors and fact checkers that who is the source and how do we go about, the courts are verified. And when it comes to the judge asking us or forcing us to reveal the source, we fight till the end. But then we could also, there is a new practice that I think interestingly Judge Gogoi sort of encouraged and taken to a different level, is the closed envelope. So we could still, give away our source with the source's consent to the judge only, for the judge's eyes only, right? So there are ways that I think when you sit down with lawyers who are willing to take the risk, that we can push the story without making it difficult for the source, who are probably in this case victims, and they're people who are going through a lot of shit than many of us as journalists do. So I think we need to be empathetic, but there is no easy answer. I think there is a lot of
thank you, Vinod. Thanks a lot. Dhanya, there's a question for you from Ashwin. He's talking about how there was this thing about between report, I think between 24 and Asianet, when Ranjit's name was revealed, there was this Bengali actor who came and said that she had been molested by somebody and she had named an actor. But one television channel did not reveal the name of the director, but another one revealed the name of the director, and they immediately put out, they were scrolling that, they had regained the correct position, the first position, and so on. So he's saying, how do you report on such cases without sensationalizing it? And, not, so he's asking, I am asking this because in the middle of covering such an important issue, I noticed that Asianet News highlighting that they have regained the top spot in viewership, which I think they had lost to 24 News at one point, blah, blah, blah. So sorry. But Dhanya, there is also a lot of competition. And if you see so much of sensationalism of all the allegations that come, you can almost see the titillating way the news is read and discussed and so on. What would you like to tell Ashwin about this?
I think Padma Priya wanted to say something, Saraswati. She was putting her hand.
Priya?
Yeah, I'll do it after Dhanya.
Okay,
yeah. Dhanya, you first.
Yeah, just one or two things about the court, what you were saying. I think Chinmay can also talk about what she has been going through in court because she has been, Chinmay has not only filed cases against ban, but even other things. So Chinmay is a veteran in court. She can tell you her experiences.
We will definitely request her to talk about it.
But see, even a Dilip case, right? Even a Dilip case, one thing that we can't report on the trial, right? But because the survivor has spoken about this, I'm saying this here, that even in that case, one of the things the defense has been saying is that it was a consensual act in the car. They have been continuously questioning her about that. So the point is that every case goes through all this. This is despite video evidence being watched by everyone from the judge to the defense. There has been questioning in the line that it was consensual. I mean, I hope one day we can write about exactly what went on in court, because it has been very traumatic. She has spoken about it in bits and pieces. Now to the question about Asianet and 24 and everyone else fighting, I think, Ashwin, I have sort of now, I'm in this Zen mode where I think that if there is some advantage out of people covering it, we should just pay attention to that instead of wanting perfect coverages. For example, there can not be a perfect victim, right? People are always looking for the perfect victim, a victim who's always sad, victim who dresses properly, a victim who's had perfect politics. Just like that, they cannot be perfect coverage. But look at the Tamil media, for example. They did not cover the Me Too movement. They never supported Chinmay. The only time Chinmay appeared on Tamil channel was when a popular anchor ripped her apart. And I remember telling Chinmay at that time, do you want to do this interview? Maybe you should not do the interview. And the backlash which happened after that was really horrible. And none of the Tamil media stood with her, not only with her, but with anybody else. At least the Malayalam media is standing with these people. Now, how they do it is problematic. They are sensationalizing it. But I want to really see the light at the end of the tunnel, that a lot of Malayali male journalists also, who I have been interacting with for years, now actually understand manufactured consent, like Melina was saying. They understand there's a fiduciary relationship between people in an organization, that even in a production, there's a fiduciary relationship where a producer or director or an actor can use that. So that realization has come in the Malayalam media, whether it's men or women working in that. And for that, a lot of women in the Malayalam media are responsible for it, right? Because they've had these tough conversations in their newsrooms. So I really don't care anymore if Asianet says that they have had the best coverage, as long as they covered it. I don't care what 24/7 says, as long as they covered it. My only problem with them is when they get distracted because of market forces. Let's also not forget that many of these directors and actors have commercial understandings with these channels. Whether it's about a show that they're doing, whether it's about buying somebody's land, whether it's about a business they run together, many of them have business interests. And I only fear that at some point of time, these business interests will matter more than the movement itself. That moment has not come now, but I'm warning everybody here that moment will come. In a week or two, we will see a subversion happening, which is when people like Melina will still have to hold out and write things in that mainstream space.
Yeah. Priya, you wanted to add to it.
I just wanted to add to both Dhanya and Vinod, and as it transitions to Chinmay, naturally that, the SIT, which has been set up by the government of Kerala, is therefore actually very, such a piecemeal exercise by itself, because
the special investigation team. Yeah.
The special investigation team. Because, it's great for people who have, as there are no perfect, survivors, and there are no perfect stories, and many of them do not have any kind of support system. And I think Chinmay could probably add more to that. But it would be great to also know from Chinmay that given her experience, what is the kind of support system and handholding the government could have done in addition to this, the SIT. Like what kind of a support structure it could have done. Like Vinod spoke so extensively about how they deal with survivor stories. I've seen how Dhanya does this. And is there something to learn that the government could have proactively done to kind of, bring what is not the standard understanding of justice and therefore invalidate the entire.
We'll have to be quick. There are a lot of messages coming up. So, but Chinmay, do tell me, Chinmay, wait a minute, Melina, can I just ask Chinmay also? Chinmay, how would you have liked to be asked treated in court? What was it that you were looking for? What is the experience that you went through from the media and the courts? Like Dhanya said about the zero kind of support you had from the Tamil media.
My fallacy was also being very naive and expecting that everybody is going to be really. I didn't expect kindness, but I expected civility at some point. Because there are a lot of journalists from Tamil media who said, because of women like me, real survivors and victims' voices are not heard. And it is my fault if rape victims are not getting justice. So many things like that. Plus, widespread slut shaming. What could the government have done? In 2018, a lot of us were actually encouraged to give our complaints to the NCW, which we did. The NCW, I wrote to them speaking about my sexual harassment with Vairamuthu. So did a couple of others, not just me. 3 women at this point have spoken to the media, facing cameras, talking about being sexually harassed by Vairamuthu and having lost their careers because of that. Other 15, 16 people are identity protected. Most of us know who they are. So in 2018, there was supposed to be a GOM, which was supposed to have been constituted under the aegis of Mr. Rajnath Singh, who was the Home Minister at that point in time. And they were supposed to be looking at all of these, complaints that had, come up across the country in different industries and spaces. So they actively asked all of us to write our complaints to the NCW, and we did. And the NCW gave 3 reminders to the DGP in Tamil Nadu to no avail. Nothing happened. And I expected something like this to happen in a more central level and at a state level, to have something like this special investigation team, or to ask, or to have an external ICC in the unions as something that they take cognizance of this issue and the widespread, the number of problems that are there in this issue. And then whenever we complain, people, so many of us getting banned left, right, and center. And I was not the first one to be banned by the W Union. Another woman had raised a similar complaint. She was banned, and after that, she was made to give an apology letter. She had to rejoin and work because her survival depended on that. So I would have liked this to be civil. I'm not expecting kindness, because a lot of women who go through courts tell us how various different cases, right? So I think that's what I was expecting. Somehow it didn't happen, because there is a lot of, as Padmapriya said earlier, they refuse to acknowledge that the problem exists. They say it doesn't exist in Tamil industry. It exists in the Kerala industry. It exists elsewhere. It doesn't exist here. Here I am talking about what's happened, and my molestation gets platformed by mainstream political parties in Tamil Nadu, including the Chief Minister. Then where do I go?
Melina, you wanted to say something, ille? Melina.
എനിക്കൊന്ന് ഒരു കാര്യം പറയാനുള്ളതെന്ന് വെച്ചാല് നമ്മള് മറ്റ് ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകൾ, മറ്റ് മീഡിയകളിലെ ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകൾ തമ്മിലുള്ള ഒരു കമ്പാനിയൻഷിപ്പ് ഈ WCC മൂവ്മെന്റിനൊപ്പം ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഡൗട്ട്സ് ഒക്കെ വരുമ്പോൾ ഞാൻ ധന്യനെ വിളിച്ച് സംസാരിക്കുന്നു, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ആർട്ടിക്കിൾ ബ്രേക്കിംഗ് ആയി കൊടുക്കുന്നുണ്ട്, ഇതിന്റെ ഒരു ഫോളോ അപ്സ് ഇങ്ങനെയെന്നൊക്കെ ഉള്ള രീതിയിലുള്ള, പിന്നെ അതുപോലെ ഒരു എറ്റിക്വറ്റ് ഉണ്ടാക്കല്. ഇപ്പം വാഷ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഫേസ്ബുക്കിന്റെ ഒരു പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമില് സർവൈവേഴ്സ് വന്നിട്ട് വെളിപ്പെടുത്തലുകൾ നടത്തും. പലപ്പോഴും അത് അനോണിമസ് ആയിരിക്കും. അപ്പം ആദ്യഘട്ടത്തിലൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ അത് ഫുൾ ക്യാരി ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പിന്നെ ഒരു ഘട്ടം എത്തിയപ്പം ആളെ പറ്റി നമ്മൾ അറ്റ്ലീസ്റ്റ് എഴുതുന്ന ജേർണലിസ്റ്റിന് ഒരു ധാരണ വേണം എന്നുള്ളത് നമ്മൾ മനസ്സിലാക്കുക ചെയ്യുന്നത്. കാരണം അതില്ലെങ്കിൽ പിന്നീട് മറ്റ് ലീഗൽ ഇഷ്യൂസിലേക്ക് പോകും എന്നുള്ളത് കൊണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ വാഷിൽ വരുന്നതിന് മുമ്പ് ഇതേപോലെ പടവെട്ട് സിനിമയിലുള്ള ഒരു പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ കൺട്രോളർ അബ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ ശ്രമിച്ച ഒരു പെൺകുട്ടീനായിട്ട് സംസാരിക്കാൻ ഇടവരുന്നു. അപ്പം ആ കുട്ടി എവിടെയും രേഖപ്പെടുത്തുകയോ കംപ്ലൈന്റ് ഒന്നും പോവുകയോ ചെയ്യുന്നില്ല. അപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ ഇത് എങ്ങനെ കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്യും, ഇത് എങ്ങനെ പുറത്തു കൊണ്ടുവരും എന്നുള്ളൊരു കൺഫ്യൂഷൻ വരും. അപ്പം ഞാൻ ധന്യനൊക്കെ വിളിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പിന്നെ നമ്മൾ തീരുമാനിച്ചത് വാഷിൽ ആ കുട്ടീനെ കൊണ്ട്, ആ സർവൈവറിനെ കൊണ്ട് അവരുടെ ഒരു അനുഭവം എഴുതിപ്പിക്കുക, അതേസമയം സമാന്തരമായി നമ്മൾ കൊടുക്കുക എന്നുള്ളത്. അപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ പലതും അങ്ങോട്ടും ഇങ്ങോട്ടും ആലോചിച്ച് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട് പല കാര്യങ്ങളും എന്നുള്ളത് എനിക്കിതിൽ സൂചിപ്പിക്കണം എന്ന് തോന്നിയിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പിന്നെ അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ആദ്യഘട്ടത്തിലൊക്കെ ഈ ദിലീപ് കേസില് സർവൈവറിന്റെ ചിത്രങ്ങൾ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ലല്ലോ ഒരിക്കലും നമുക്ക്. അപ്പം ഈ മുഖം പൊത്തി കരയുന്ന ടൈപ്പിലുള്ള ചിത്രങ്ങൾ കൊടുത്തിരുന്നപ്പം മറ്റ് മീഡിയകളിലുള്ളവരും നമ്മളും ഒക്കെ തന്നെ ഇത്ര സ്ട്രോങ് ആയിരുന്ന ഒരു ലേഡീനെ ഇങ്ങനെ കരയുന്ന രൂപത്തിൽ നമ്മൾ റെപ്രസെന്റേറ്റീവ് ഇമേജ് കൊടുക്കുന്നതിൽ ശരികേടില്ലേ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമ്മുടെ മീഡിയയിലും മറ്റ് മീഡിയകളിലൊക്കെ മാറ്റാനുള്ള ശ്രമം നടത്തുന്നു. അങ്ങനെ പല രീതിയിൽ ഈ മീഡിയ ലാംഗ്വേജ് വരെ ഇവോൾവ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. മീഡിയ ഇതിനെ മൊത്തം ട്രീറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന രീതിയും ഇവോൾവ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ ലേറ്റസ്റ്റ് ആയിട്ട് ഈ നിവിൻ പോളി കഴിഞ്ഞ ദിവസം വന്നിട്ട് അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ വേർഷൻ പറഞ്ഞു. അതിൽ എനിക്ക് ഏറ്റവും പ്രോബ്ലമാറ്റിക് ആയിട്ട് തോന്നിയിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്ന ഒരു കാര്യം വെച്ചാൽ, പോലീസ് പറഞ്ഞു ഒരുപാട് ഫേക്ക് കേസുകൾ വരുന്നുണ്ടെന്ന്. എന്ത് ഡാറ്റയുടെ എവിഡൻസിന്റെ അടിസ്ഥാനത്തിലാണ് ആ സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെന്റ് നടത്തുന്നത് എന്നുള്ളതായി. എന്തൊരു ഇൻസെൻസിറ്റീവ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെന്റ് ആണ്. ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞ് അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ നിരപരാധിത്വം തെളിയിക്കാനുള്ള അവകാശമുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ അതേസമയം കേസുകളിലെ ഭൂരിഭാഗവും എന്താ പറയാ, വെറും അലിഗേഷൻ ആണെന്നും വ്യാജ പരാതികളാണെന്നും പറയുന്നത് പ്രോബ്ലമാറ്റിക് ആണ്. അപ്പൊ അതൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ ഏറ്റെടുക്കേണ്ടതുണ്ട് എന്നുള്ളതാണ്.
Okay. Melina is talking that, like the WCC, even in media, the whole current events about the actor and the abuse and what followed has created a kind of a sisterhood. So when she needs help, she reaches out to Dhanya to ask her whether, how she could follow up her story, what is the way to handle it, how could one tackle the story, and so on. So recently there was this thing about an actor who complained about a molestation case on the sets of a film called Padavetta. So the survivor didn't want to be outed out. So she spoke to Dhanya and they decided how to handle it. So she was saying that recently, even in the Nivin Pauly case, Nivin Pauly made a statement. He wanted to prove that he was innocent. But then he made a blanket statement that the police told him that there are a lot of fake cases coming up, which kind of puts the entire number of cases that are coming up under the kind of a false, where you stand accused of foisting false cases. So one has to be, even as media persons, one has to be very careful about how you handle such stories and the way you go about it. And she says these current stories. Dhanya, there's a question coming up by Anna. Would you like to listen to that and then answer?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Anna asks, although by and large the response to the Hema Committee has been positive, I've detected a certain defensiveness in the men who deposed before the committee and some male personalities in Kerala about the Malayalam film industry being singled out for scrutiny. Has anyone in the Malayalam film industry suggested, either in public or in private conversations, the WCC's work and the Hema report are responsible for spoiling Kerala's reputation nationwide? If you have not faced this response, are you prepared for the possibility of this response? Yeah, Anna, Mohanlal actually pointed out that, not to kill the Malayalam film industry. And it was not something that was exclusive to the Malayalam film industry. And he requested media persons not to kill the industry and so on. Priya, would you like to add more to that about this whole thing about how only the Malayalam film industry is being singled out? And there was a general defensiveness by all the men concerned, right? Siddiq also came and initially said, oh, I'm so concerned about the way this is going to affect the industry and so on. Priya and Dhanya?
I don't know what more to add to it, but there is like this, the fact is that it systematically exists across other industries. It manifests differently. And so therefore one can't really comment about a particular industry over the other unless you have like a report like, say, the JHC and other reports to substantiate. So, I mean, I really don't know what else to add, but there is always a pressure for us to, at least in the few interviews that I have done, there is this pressure to like validate that this is not just Malayalam film industry issue. But apart from that, really not so much.
Dhanya, about the recent statements.
No, there is definitely a narrative that Malayalam industry is being singled out. And this I heard from a Tamil actor also yesterday, that this is a destruction of the industry by the media, things like that. I just want to quickly add to what Melina was saying and what Chinmay was saying. When I said, Tamil media was not supporting Chinmay, I don't mean the English media in Tamil Nadu, which generally did behave better with her. But in the Tamil media also, I feel that a change is slowly coming because women are becoming more prominent in the newsrooms. In Malayalam, we have really gone through this whole cycle, which has really helped, right? For example, when the Dilip case happened, I remember that a television channel will have it was like AMMA. They are with the actor who's assaulted. They are with the actor who conspired. Even the media would behave like that. They'll have one interview of somebody who is a Dilip supporter, and they'll have another interview of somebody who says, no, Dilip may have done it. So, but this time I see a marked difference in how they are covering it. They understand that both these people are not at the same level. It's not the duty of a journalist to take A and B's opinion and give it to the audience without telling the audience that A is an oppressor or A has more privilege or power. So I feel that the media in Kerala has understood that difference now, and there's a marked difference in their coverage, which also does a lot of things, right? And to Anna's question, yeah, like I said, in the next few weeks, things will, there is a whole possibility that the narrative may change, right? And the case is also coming up in the High Court on the 10th. You never know how the narrative is going to change. It may turn against the women, but there is a public conscience which cannot be killed at this moment. And that what we have to look at is that growing public conscience. We have to keep telling the public that, look, you have to stand with these women.
Yeah, and there's one more question that Ammu has asked. There's another question. She says the Hema Committee report has had ripple effects across the country too, with women working in cinema in Bengal, Telangana, AP, etc., and even some in Mumbai, speaking out and making it clear that this is not an exclusively Malayalam film industry Mollywood problem. Are there lessons to be learned from the Kerala experience as women in cinema elsewhere try to bring about necessary reform in these industries? Melina parayunno adine pattita?
എന്തായിരുന്നു ഒന്നുകൂടി പറഞ്ഞു ചേച്ചി? Can you please repeat?
Yeah. Are there lessons? If a Hema Committee report has had ripple effects across the country, other industries are also making it very clear that this is not an exclusive Malayalam film industry problem. Are they to be learned from the Kerala experience? Men in cinema elsewhere try to bring about necessary reform in their industries. ബാക്കി ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസിന് ഒരു പാഠമാണ് ഇത്.
അത് കൃത്യമായിട്ടുമാണ്. പക്ഷെ നല്ല രീതിയിലുള്ള ഒരു ഇമ്പാക്ട് വരണമെങ്കിൽ ഗവൺമെന്റിന്റെ ഭാഗത്തു നിന്നുള്ള ഒരു നടപടികളും കൂടി വരണം. എപ്പോഴും ഈ കോൾ ഔട്ട് ചെയ്ത് എപ്പോഴും നമ്മൾ ഈ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ നമ്മൾ നേരിട്ട ഇഷ്യൂസ് മാത്രമല്ല ഇവിടെ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്. പകരം ഒരു നിയമം വരണം, ഒരു ആക്ട് ഉണ്ടാവണം, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഇതിൽ എന്ത് ആക്ഷൻ എടുക്കുന്നു എന്നുള്ളതിൽ വ്യക്തത വരണം. അത്തരം കാര്യങ്ങളും കൂടി ഉണ്ടായാൽ അതൊരു മാതൃകാപരമാവും എന്നുള്ളതാണ് എൻ്റെ അഭിപ്രായം.
Melina says that unless the government acts on these recommendations and really comes out with a solid set of answers to the problems raised with the Hema Committee, it won't have much of an effect. The government has to step in and really make sure that they're serious about tackling the problems raised by the Hema Committee. There's another question.
And the government doesn't seem to have any such intention.
Yeah, that is the next question. That's why I thought, what were the factors for the delay in making the Hema Committee report public, and what are the factors that helped in ultimately making it public? I think, Dhanya, that is your take on it, because you know the before and after. The government had didn't have any plans of making it public. It was only because of RTIs being filed by media persons that they were forced to publish it and release it in the public. There was also an RTI filed before the High Court also. Dhanya, you could talk more about it, right?
Yeah. So I think the government did not think through when this committee was made. When they approached Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, they had to do something at that moment because there was so much of anger and outrage, right? So the government just formed this committee, and I think they also did not expect that a lot of women will go and speak to this committee. Now, the first problem was that everybody was under the impression it's a commission and not a committee. The whole committee is over. I remember WCC first coming out and saying, where is the report? Because we all went and spoke to the committee and there is no report. Then the report was submitted after a lot of pressure from WCC to the Chief Minister on December 31st, 2019. Again, 2 months silence. It is Shanimol Usman, an MLA from Kerala, who's also a lawyer. She asked a question in the assembly as to where is the report, which is when the Chief Minister comes and says that this is not a commission of judicial inquiry, this is a committee, and therefore it does not have to behave like a commission. What the government also does at that time, Shanimol, I think, asked the question on Feb 5th or something. By 19th, they get a letter from Justice Hema saying that, oh, please keep this report confidential. And even if you release it, follow all Supreme Court guidelines. Now, what are Supreme Court guidelines? That you have to keep the name of the survivor secret and ensure that they have all sorts of privacy, right? But the government decided to use that letter and not release the report at all. There have been multiple RTIs, people have asked the government, people have met the ministers, nothing happened. The new information commissioner acted on the appeal and said that release the report. Then we saw what happened. The commissioner wanted only 35 paragraphs redacted. He gave it to the information officer, who then wanted 110 paragraphs redacted. And finally, when the report was released, 121 paragraphs were redacted. No one knows why the Kerala government redacted extra 11 paragraphs, 11 pages, sorry, not paragraphs. So a lot of mystery as to why the government did not want the report out, which led to a lot of speculation, right, as to who was named in this report. Is it because of the people who were named in the report?
And still there is no ISIS in many of the locations, shooting locations.
Yeah.
Yes. Amu points out that it's obvious that film industries are not the only workplaces where many of these issues highlighted by the Hema Committee report exist. Is there anything that women working in other professions can learn from the WCC Hema Committee experience as they attempt to bring about change? The NW, for example, is made a beginning with this document that is about toxic newsrooms. And in this regard, yes, I think the media has a long way to go. We in Trivandrum, for instance, have been fighting a very long battle against a press club, which is under the government of Kerala, where the press club president is a man who has been accused of serious gender crimes by 2 different women. And he has been elected with huge majority by the male members mostly, of the Trivandrum Press Club. And we still haven't been able to dislodge him. He has had 2 serious cases, and the woman journalist who accused him was forced to leave her work and she now lives in anonymity in Kerala somewhere, while the press club president, with serious allegations against him, continues to lord it over the press club. So that shows how the government and generally the media in Kerala are behaving towards these kind of problems, the kind of issues that survivors have to face when it really comes to talking about it and having to exist and having to work in such a society. So I think, yes, we will have to take it up at some point or the later about toxic newsrooms and so on. And another question that Shreya Raman has asked is that, also adding to Anna's point, fan clubs are such a major part of the industry. In 2018, Dilip fans were all over social media spewing hate. Are you noticing any such network-based gendered hate speech now, despite the strong evidence of structural nature violence that Hema Committee report puts forward? I'm sure each of the panelists here will talk about the cyber abuse you all faced. Dhanya, you yourself had to face a lot of it. For writing about it, forget about complaining.
I will skip this question, because if I say something, it will start another. I just finished one 72-hour. I feel like all trolling is a 72-hour cycle, because first it's a local guys, and it will go to the state guys, and go to national guys, then Op India will come. So I just finished one 72-hour cycle. I would like to skip this question.
What about Melina, about cyber attack and the way the fans association go onto the pages of the journalists and the survivors and write complete, really crappy things about them? I mean, it's very distressing even to read it. Forget about the person at the receiving end. Even as a reader, to read these comments is very disturbing. Melina, you've also faced a bit of it.
കേരളത്തിലെ മലയാളത്തിലെ വനിതാ ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകൾക്ക് കഴിഞ്ഞ 10 വർഷമായിട്ട് വളരെ ഭീകരമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു അശ്ലീലക്കത്ത് ഒരാളുടെ അടുത്തുനിന്ന് വരുന്നുണ്ട്. അതിൽ ഇതുവരെ ഒരു നടപടി ആയിട്ടില്ല. ഞാനൊക്കെ ഇപ്പൊ അതിൽ കേസ് കൊടുത്തിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ആളെ കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചു, അയാൾ ജാമ്യത്തിൽ ഇറങ്ങി, അയാൾ എനിക്ക് മാപ്പ് അയച്ചു, ഇനി അയക്കൂല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഇപ്പൊ ദാ വീണ്ടും ഒരാഴ്ച മുൻപ് വീണ്ടും അയാൾ കത്തെഴുതി തുടങ്ങി എന്നുള്ള വലിയ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടിയിട്ടാണ് 10 വർഷത്തിന് ശേഷം ആരാണ് ഇത് എന്നുള്ളത് നമ്മൾ കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചത് തന്നെ, ഒരു 73 വയസ്സുകാരൻ. പക്ഷെ എനിക്കിതിൽ തോന്നി, ഞാനൊരു കാര്യം ആഡ് ചെയ്യാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത് എന്താ വെച്ചാൽ, നമ്മൾ ഈ ജെൻഡർ ഇഷ്യൂസ് റിപ്പോർട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്ന ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകളെ മറ്റ് ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകൾ, മെയിൽ ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകൾ കാണുന്നത് നമ്മുടെ ഒരു പരിമിതി ആയിട്ടാണ്. അതെ, നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇതേ അറിയൂ എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ പലപ്പോഴും സംസാരം ഞാൻ കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ ഞാൻ ഇവരോട് ചോദിക്കും, നിങ്ങൾ സ്പോർട്സ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് സ്പോർട്സ് ബീറ്റ് എന്ന് പറയും, നിങ്ങൾ മൂവീസ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ മൂവീസ് ബീറ്റ് എന്ന് പറയും, മറ്റ് പൊളിറ്റിക്സ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ ബീറ്റ് എന്ന് പറയും. ഞങ്ങൾ മാത്രം ജെൻഡർ ഇഷ്യൂസ് കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ ഇത് എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഞങ്ങളുടെ ലിമിറ്റേഷൻ ആവുന്നതെന്ന് ഞാൻ ചോദിക്കാറുണ്ട്. അപ്പം അത്തരത്തിലുള്ള ന്യൂസ് റൂം ഡിസ്കഷനുകളും മറ്റ് പല കാര്യങ്ങളും നമ്മൾ നേരിട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്. പിന്നെ ഇത്തരത്തിലുള്ള ഒരു കോസിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് നമ്മൾ മുന്നോട്ട് ഇറങ്ങുമ്പോൾ ഇതൊക്കെ വളരെ സ്വാഭാവികമായിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യമൊന്നും അങ്ങനെ ഒരു സ്ട്രെസ് ആയിട്ട് മാറാറില്ല ഇതുവരെ. പക്ഷെ ഈ രാധാകൃഷ്ണൻ കേസിൽ വളരെ രീതിയിലുള്ള സ്ട്രെസ്സിലേക്കാണ് അതിലെ സർവൈവേഴ്സ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകൾ പോയിട്ടുള്ളത്. ആ കേസിൽ വളരെ മോശമായി സംസാരിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട് രാധാകൃഷ്ണൻ ആ സർവൈവർ ആയിട്ടുള്ള പെൺകുട്ടീനോട്. പക്ഷേ അത് ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകളുടെ ഇടയിൽ തന്നെ സംസാരിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ആ സമയത്ത് ഞാൻ ആ റിപ്പോർട്ട് എഴുതുന്നതിന് മുൻപേ ഉള്ള സമയങ്ങളിൽ പല ജേർണലിസ്റ്റുകളുടെ അടുത്ത് സംസാരിച്ചപ്പോൾ അവർക്ക് കിട്ടിയിരുന്ന ഇൻഫോർമേഷൻ അതൊരു റോഡ് സൈഡിലെ വാക്തർക്കമായിരുന്നു എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അതായത് രണ്ടുപേരും കൂടി ഇൻവോൾവ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു പ്രശ്നം എന്നുള്ളതാണ്, അബ്യൂസ് എന്നുള്ളതിന്റെ അപ്പുറത്ത്. അപ്പം ആ രീതിയിലുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ നടക്കുന്നുണ്ട്.
Melina is talking about the very patriarchal attitude of the Malayalam media especially. She says for the last 10 years, women journalists in the Malayalam media have been receiving anonymous letters. And Melina, it's only not Malayalam. I've got a couple of ones too, but let's see, it's about other things. So it's very, very, the whole thing is spewing all kinds of things against the women concerned. And they managed to nab this person, the 73-year-old man, and he apologized. But he has again started writing, and it took 10 years for the police to nab this person. So cyber abuse and anonymous letters have become a common experience for women media persons in Kerala. And she was talking about the press club president, who kind of, the survivor is under a lot of stress. But the press club president continues to lord it over, and nobody's asking questions. We have been begging for national attention so that at least somebody calls him out. And she says that the kind of language the press club president uses is obnoxious against a survivor, against women media persons who have been fighting him. So this is the ambience in which we work and do our daily work. And she says there is a kind of a prejudice about women who write about gender. She says, so men, there are a lot of men who write about politics. They say they are on the political beat, or sports people who write about sports. But when it comes to covering gender topics, the men have this very condescending attitude, and they say, oh, they see it as a limiting factor or something that, women can't do anything else, so they're forced to report on gender. She said these are things that have been going on for some time in the Malayalam media, but we've been, despite all these, we've been, the media persons in Malayalam have been doing excellent work. There's another question from Asya Sherwani, more an observation. What the Hema Committee and others like us describe as a mafia power group, those part of the power group see as a group of extremely talented actors, directors, producers, etc. The way they see themselves is important here. Entitled people view themselves as God's gift to mankind. Perhaps we could work on breaking this myth that this bunch is superior talent. I think we have to create more awareness on how abusers think and operate. Priya, here, this is something you're best qualified. Because
Also,
we've
I think
seen
social media abuse, Chinmay can definitely address that.
Yeah. Chinmay, would you like to go first, or will Priya talk about it and then Chinmay,
No,
whichever?
yeah, let Priya talk. I'll add later.
Yeah, Priya.
Sorry, I just went away for a minute, so I'll take.
Priya, so they're saying that, there are a lot of women, a lot of people, not just women, see this group, this power group / mafia group as a bunch of extremely talented actors, directors, producers, etc. And they themselves think they're mankind's, God's gift to mankind for being these excellent, great group of filmmakers. Perhaps we could, this is Asya writes, perhaps we could work on breaking this myth that this bunch is superior talent. I think we have to create more awareness on how abusers think and operate.
So I look at it two ways. I mean, definitely when the Me Too movement happened, especially in Hollywood, like this entire perception of about Woody Allen, right? Even for actors like me who have looked up to him. So I completely agree that like a nuanced understanding and breaking of this myth that you're a great human being because you're an amazing creator needs to really come off. And that's one thing. But I feel also that that is not sufficient by itself, because this power group today will then shift to become another power group tomorrow. And therefore, for that to completely change, we'll have to have a systemic change of how do we reduce the hierarchies within a working structure, so that this power group just doesn't shift from A to B, but actually gets questioned and kind of doesn't have that kind of locus of control like it does currently have.
Thank you, Priya. We have got 6 minutes now left. Chinmayu, can you talk a little bit about the kind of vicious cyber abuse you had to face after coming out, talking about Vairamuthu's abuse?
So this was somehow he became the poster boy for Tamil society across the board. There were lots of political groups and their IT wings abusing me left, right, and center, slut shaming, some of the most horrendous, haranguing stuff I've seen. But somehow this, they will always do this. Oh, why did she call Vairamuthu to her wedding sort of thing? Interestingly, not only would a DMK or somebody else do that, but also when I questioned about some other issue, let's say a Bridge Bhushan or something like that, then the BJP ITV would do the same thing. So I think with regard to women and how trolling and the troll army in general works, is that they would like to hold on to and pick up something. So one side, they will pretend as if they care for the cause and the issue of sexual harassment. But in reality, I think they will use that to weaponize against any survivor if they think that it will further their cause, whatever that day that cause will be at that point in time.
Thank you, Chinmay. Priya, there's a question for you in particular. Since there is so much in common in the kind of exploitation, harassment faced by women in the cinema industry, is there scope for or merit in pushing for a national code of conduct for the industry, for the film industry? Tricky question.
I would say yes and no, because while the issues may be similar, the way they manifest in the context of that would probably change. So while a general code of conduct can be made nationally available, especially in an unorganized sector across in cinema, but I wouldn't paintbrush it and say that that's something which every industry by itself can, like those kind of that that solution is sufficient.
This is a question from one of the people who registered earlier, from Mausumi Nag. What steps can be taken to ensure that the momentum from this movement leads to structural reforms rather than isolated acts of accountability, particularly in male-dominated industry like cinema?
I think the labor and the onus of getting all of the work done also falls on us. We keep asking the questions, and we have presented the issues, and here the powers that be and those who hold the power to actually change the system, that power is not held in our hands, and those who do refuse to do anything. In this case, I myself am looking to see where will we get the solution, because it's not fun to be constantly in the space where we are looking and asking and asking for justice. It's not fun being in this space. So what is the way forward? I myself want a way forward from my working space, not just for myself but for everybody else. But what do I do again when the system itself seems to collude with the perpetrators is my question. I don't have an answer for that.
I think in the Hema Committee's thing, it has to be the government of Kerala. There's no other answer. All the different associations in the film industry, they have to come together and say, we will do this, we will do this, we will do this. Otherwise, there's no solution to this, there's no end to this.
The issue of toxic, this is again a question to Vinod particular, and the issue of toxic work environments, particularly media organization, raises serious questions about the credibility and sincerity of news outlets when reporting on gender-based abuse and discrimination. When media institutions fail to address gender abuse internally, the case of the Trivandrum Press Club, for instance, along with other incidents of workplace harassment, exemplifies this contradiction. Doesn't the fact that media houses focus more on sensationalism rather than systemic workplace issues, even after the Hema Committee report, show a deeper problem?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question. I think it would probably deserve a 2-hour discussion in itself. I think newsrooms go through a ton of issues and a lot of sort of dirty practices and bad behavior and prejudices and all that kind of stuff, which one wouldn't even know where to begin with, right? I think there are seriously prejudices that it's not safe for women to do certain. In the initial days, it was not safe for women to do politics, as I think Melina has pointed out, or Danya has said that the certain women were given the featured desk. I think even American journalism, John Didion and many others have written a lot extensively about 1950s and 60s about how women were given this sort of featured desk. And then I think there is another generation which has sort of jumped that big hurdle in India. But then right now that I see a lot of it is that it's not very safe for them to put on investigative stories. It's not very safe for us to send them to certain places, maybe a riot-prone area and things like that. There are all those kind of practices. Then there's a huge issue of diversity, even within women colleagues who are working in news organizations. Sometimes they could become allies of male managers who then take certain decisions in a certain way. So there is the caste diversity issue, there is the rural-urban issue, there is the language issue, there's a sexuality issue. So a lot of it, I think, needs to get addressed. And you see that somehow many of it are connected with each other. So so as I said, I think this would probably need a 2-hour discussion in itself.
I'm just picking up a random some questions that came in earlier. Do you think we need to rethink about the words we use for sexual abuse, maybe starting from media reports? This is Meena. Often the victims find it difficult and shameful to use some words, and any kind of opening up and graphic description leads to trolling. Danya, do you like to take that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You're talking about the pictures, that question.
No. Do you think we need to rethink about the words we use for sexual abuse? Maybe starting from media reports.
Yeah. So I remember this whole argument which a few members of the WCC had in the initial days of the actor assault case. So I think it was Rima who objected to one of the newspapers using the word rape. right? So I thought a lot about it at that time. I did not know the journalist who wrote the story or Rima much at that time. But then I spoke to Vidya Reddy, who works with Tulir in Chennai. So Vidya has over the years helped me sort of understand that sometimes some words, like for example, when you talk about a child, you should not use the word rape again and again, because it does create a sort of stigma, right? So then you use the word sexual abuse or sexual assault, though the law may define that as rape. So I think there are a lot of things to keep in mind. So at TNM, we don't write child rape, perhaps in the headline only because of word limitations. But otherwise, we don't say the word rape when it comes to children. So I think every organization has to then think as to how can you sensitively cover things, including from your picture to how you write. Like, for example, we do not write details about a crime. But that can also be problematic at times. For example, in 2019, this actor who had come, the model who had come up against Siddiq, she put up a Facebook post and we had interviewed her then. So she told us that it was sexual misconduct. So normally we tell our reporters, no need to ask too much about the detail unless you really want to get into it. So I'm assuming the reporter did not ask at that time exactly what happened to you, because it's something for them to share and not for us to probe, right? But the problem now is Siddiq has given a police case saying in 2019, when she spoke to the News Minute, she did not say this, but later she has said all this. So which means she has changed her version. Now, this is forcing me to think whether I have to rethink the way we report, right? So it's all evolving. I mean, this is a question which has been posed to me now. 1 week ago, when Siddiq gave a police complaint, that does our reticence to actually write down details, can that later pose problems for a survivor in court? Because in Bishop Franco's case, we saw that one of the nuns gave an interview to a Malayalam channel, which was picked by the defense, used against her, saying that you said this in the interview, you did not say this in the complaint. And that was one of the primary reasons that Franco was acquitted in that case. So I think with every such case, we have to keep evolving. We have to rethink and become more sensitive.
Thank you, Dhanya. This is the last question. We are running out of time. Padma Priya, this is to you. Share innovative ways the WCC used to keep the issue alive and sustain the pressure on authorities, from Anita Charya.
Multiple things, both internally and externally. One, I mean, internally, we used to have these fun sessions because we just got really overburdened by, the pain of the entire campaign and trying to find, solutions to what we wanted. So we started things like Chaya time and seriously, I think sisterhood and solidarity is really underrated, but I think keeping that alive is a very key thing. But apart from that, as the kind of responses, I mean, a lot of it is also the innovation is based on the responses or the lack of responses that you get. One of the ways was, of course, I mean, media advocacy, but then the other thing was also on our own, what kind of media advocacy. So kind of like the cyber harassment campaign that we took to kind of educate people on cyber, what is cyber assault, what is cyber, what are the kind of resolutions. We also had some kind of sensitization sessions for not just WCC members, but for all women in the industry on what POSH is, what cyber violence is. Then, of course, of course, people are talking about recommendations today, but there are at least 4 to 5 times that we have occasions that we have gone to the culture minister and the chief, culture minister and the WCD department. So it's like a constant case of advocacy and trying to keep the situation alive. Sometimes trying to be also silent because you need that piece. But yeah, there is not like one particular way, but it's very important to keep the solidarity and sisterhood active. I think one thing that we have really not been able to really fight is this complete lack of opportunities, and that has been, pretty much dispersed of like, if you can't find opportunities here, then you go to some other industry and work. Not just for actors, but I've noticed that that's happening across the trade, and I mean that's something we just are there in the Chaya sessions to hear about each other and find networking mechanisms to try and find, gigs here and there. So, I mean, I think it's very important to like balance the fact that you're going to have a lot of lashback and you have to find ways, and that's not something we expected. And then to innovatively figure out across stakeholders, how do you kind of engage? There have been like, media has only covered, for instance, our open conversations with the MMA, but there's so many conversations we have with our co-actors and like a much larger actor community to know and get a sense and pulse as to what they feel. So a lot of it sometimes is on record, sometimes it's not in media spotlight, and I think a combination of varied things and just patience and hope that this will find its way is what we kind of do and work together.
Would everyone like to have just one sentence to conclude, starting with you, Dhanya or Chinmayi, and then just one sentence? We are really running short of time. Quick one sentence to conclude this evening's discussions.
Quick one sentence is, let's not get distracted. Let's keep the focus on what the outcome of all this should be.
Chinmayi?
I second that.
Nilina? Nilina? Same thing. Okay. Vinod?
I think it's a long game. We are in it for the entire life.
Priya?
No, I hope it's not that, but I think the focus, as
that sounds dire, Vinod. That sounds really dire.
Yeah. Vinod, yeah.
No, in a good way. I think you'll always push horizons, right? You don't stop when you think that you've achieved something. You still keep pushing.
Thank you very much.
ലാസ്റ്റ് കാര്യം കൂടി ഈ ക്രിയേറ്റീവ് ഫീൽഡിലെ തുല്യവേതനത്തെ പറ്റിയിട്ട് സംസാരിക്കുമല്ലോ. എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഈ ക്രിയേറ്റീവ് ഫീൽഡിൽ തുല്യവേതനം എന്നുള്ളത് നിങ്ങൾ ആവശ്യപ്പെടുക എന്നുള്ളത്? അത് മാർക്കറ്റിനെ അടിസ്ഥാനപ്പെടുത്തിയിട്ടുള്ളതാണ്. പക്ഷെ മാർക്കറ്റ് ആര് നിർണ്ണയിക്കുന്നു എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിലേക്ക് ഇനി ചർച്ചകൾ എന്തായാലും വരേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. അത് ഒരുപാട് സാധാരണക്കാർ ഇപ്പൊ ചോദിക്കുന്ന ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആണ്. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു നടിക്ക് എങ്ങനെയാണ് തുല്യവേതനം കൊടുക്കുക എന്നുള്ളത്? അപ്പം ആ രീതിയിൽ ഇനി നമ്മൾ ആളുകളെ ഉത്ബോധിപ്പിക്കേണ്ടതുണ്ടെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നുണ്ട്.
Melina wants to conclude that, she would like to discuss how the wages to be paid to an actor, female actor, can be discussed, because all these producers talk about market value. How does one decide the market value of a person? All these are questions that need to be asked and discussed. Thank you, each of you, the panelists, Vinod, Melina, Padmapriya, Dhanya, and Chinmayi. Thank you so much for joining in and for talking about this very important issue about the Hema Committee recommendations and where we go forward from here. Because this, as I said earlier, this not only applies to the film industry, but to all industries where women work. And as such, the sisterhood is important. And also in the sisterhood, we include brothers who also support our cause. So as we move forward, we need to tackle very important issues, and we must pressurize the government to implement the recommendations, some of which have come up, regarding labor violations on film sets and also in other industries where women work. And I think it's been a very fruitful discussion. Thank you to all the participants who joined in from different parts of India. Thank you, Jisha, Anupama, and Leena Raghunath for doing a lot of back work. Aishwarya and Ragamalika too. Thanks so much for joining in. I hope you've had a fruitful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.